In yet another turning point in the ongoing Ukraine war, American envoys kicked off critical negotiations with Russian envoys in Riyadh on Monday as tensions escalate between Russia and Ukraine. These talks come after a similar session with Ukrainian officials on Sunday. Both sides have agreed for now to halt the attacks on vital energy infrastructures, but key questions remain. How will this fragile truce be enforced? And can it pave the way for lasting peace? Monday talks focus on securing safety for Black Sea shipping routes and navigating the complex web of energy and military concerns. While Ukrainian officials are pushing for comprehensive guarantees on territorial integrity and NATO membership, Russia continues to demand sweeping concessions, including a halt to foreign aid and military support to Kyiv. The road ahead remains perilous, with both nations unwilling to fully back down. Now, despite hopes for a temporary ceasefire, experts warn the negotiations could be just the beginning of long and rocky diplomatic journey. All right, let's bring in at this moment Elena, Davlikanova Research Center for Socio-Economic and Policy Innovations, Ukraine and Germany. In fact, we are also being joined by Tatiana Kukhareva, senior journalist, and Dr. Brahma, Chellaney, strategic affairs expert, who is with us at this moment. Thank you so much to all of you for speaking to us. Let me understand from you, Elena, at this moment, finally there is at least discussions on what would it take? What would be the key issues that Ukraine would want to be fulfilled, some promises that they would want to see settled before any kind of truce deal can be reached?
Thank you very much for your invitation. It's an honor to be here. I think that the most important question for Ukraine is, of course, security guarantees. There can be no ceasefire with the following peace without very specific security guarantees for Ukraine. As of now, Ukraine, it was made clear for Ukraine that it is not going to get any invitation to NATO. This question is off the table. So what exactly will our allies do in order to ensure that whatever agreements are reached, that Russia will follow what it has agreed to? And if any document is signed, so we need to be sure that that Russia will respect all these agreements. We know that Russia has a whole history of not respecting agreements that it has been signing. Since 2014, Ukraine and Russia were conducting 200 rounds of peace talks, and there have been agreements that were violated by Russia in 2022.
Right. Tatiana, while both the countries stick to their demand, is the hope of a short-term truce, even acceptable as far as Russia is concerned?
Well, it's a very good, term that you used, acceptable. I think that the problem is that, Russia's been saying all along for many, many months, years actually now, what it finds acceptable in this situation, yet somehow it still is not heard. We're hoping, that these consultations that are ongoing today will bring us a little bit closer to explaining our position. As far as, what my counterpart has said, let me remind the viewers that the Minsk agreements that were the essential talks between Russia and Ukraine were not violated by Russia. We can obviously stick to the favored narrative in Ukraine that it all kind of unraveled in February 2022, but that is as far from reality on the ground as it can possibly be. There was indiscriminate killing of people in the Donbass region for years. that Russia was opposed to. And the problem with this security guarantees is actually a very serious problem, because back then we did agree to a specific set of conditions,
right,
which was violated basically the next day, and European nations did nothing to stop this violation of the Minsk agreements. And so today, in 2025, the question of security guarantees is probably the most important one.
Okay. Dr. Chellaney, let me bring you in on this. I mean, even with this discussion, we understand that it's very difficult to bring both Russia and Ukraine on the table at this moment. The United States is the mediator, but it's not that all three are talking together. A short-term truce, is that even realistic, and can that lead to some long-term settlement between Russia and Ukraine?
First, the US is not just a mediator. The US is fully involved in the war. The war is not just between Russia and Ukraine. The US, short of putting its own soldiers in harm's way, is fully involved in the war, including in sharing intelligence, battlefield intelligence, and also it controls the targets in Russia that Ukraine strikes. So it's fully involved in this war, and the US under Trump is seeking to cut its losses by ending its involvement in the war. That's the reason why Trump is seeking at least a ceasefire in this conflict. He wants to shift America's strategic priority from Europe to the Indo-Pacific, where America's real enemy, China, is located. So as long as this war continues in Europe, the US will remain mired in European security. He wants an early end to this conflict so that the US can shift both its attention as well as its military resources to the Indo-Pacific. Now, ending the Ukraine war will require a complex and carefully negotiated resolution. But as Trump has publicly said, a ceasefire will be much easier than getting a permanent peace settlement. In fact, a ceasefire will be a step toward permanent peace. So right now, the efforts in Riyadh, the negotiations that are ongoing, the effort is to reach some understanding on a potential ceasefire.
Okay.
But a ceasefire itself poses challenges given the fact that Russia is making advances on the battlefield. So a ceasefire may not suit Russia at the moment. So there are these complex issues that need to be sorted out. And I think Trump's earlier post before he took office that he will end the war in 24 hours, he's now realizing that this entire effort is going to be pretty challenging and pretty complex.
Well, positions change when you sit on the chair. Before sitting on that chair, a lot can be said, which may or may not be practical. But Elena, let me understand this from you, because one red line that now, in fact, Donald Trump, the United States, which was backing Ukraine fully, has also drawn is the NATO membership. Neither Russia wants that for Ukraine, nor is it as easy with the United States also, in fact, more or less backing down from the NATO membership. Could this possibly be one key aspect in these negotiations which Ukraine would possibly have to roll back on?
First of all, Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2014 when Ukrainians decided that they want to be a part of the European family, to go back to Europe, because Ukraine is a European nation. And Russia attacked Ukraine not because of NATO enlargement. Moreover, the lack of the invitation and the lack of NATO membership invites Russian aggression to the states, especially to Ukraine. And Russia was rightly recognized as a terrorist state by many European countries. So that we need to understand a very important thing. NATO has nothing to do with Russian aggression, who wants to restore Soviet Union, who wants to dominate in the region, and who is planning to attack Europe and many European countries. Already the intelligence of these European countries is saying that these countries have to be ready for the war with Russia by 2030. Russian aggression is deeply imperialistic, and it is very, very sad that Ukraine never got its invitation back in 2007. And I hope that we will be able to create the coalition of the willing and stop Russian aggression and also protect our European allies.
Tatiana finds that amusing. Tatiana, go ahead, with your assertion on that. I also want to ask you what Dr. Chellaney was in fact speaking about. The fact is that Russia is on the move right now. They are on the offensive. A short-term ceasefire is something that Russians believe that will give time for the Ukrainian armed forces to regroup and, launch a counter-offensive.
Well, definitely, you don't need to be a military expert for that. That is basically textbook. You have to just watch enough war movies, I think, to understand that any sort of breather that can happen on the ground for the Ukrainian forces would allow it to, first of all, re-equip themselves, because we've had this brief moment of uncertainty of whether, the US military aid will stop, it will not stop. So right now, of course, a ceasefire is something that would not benefit Russian forces in any way, shape, or form. But it's not even about that. It's as simple as, however the Ukrainians, however much they want to talk about them being European when they were never invited into the European Union. The European Union Association Agreement that I, as a journalist, have actually had to read. I'm not sure Elena did, but she's, shaking her head vehemently, trying to explain something that never existed in life, in reality. It existed in the heads of the people who were in the Maidan. Unfortunately, in reality, Ukraine was supposed to become a market for European goods, which would essentially bankrupt the country. Unfortunately, however much we talk about what happened in 2014, what's been happening since 2014, and what ended in this conflict that is ongoing right now, the problem remains the same. We were talking about both sides agreeing to stopping attacks on energy infrastructure. Now, this is very simple. There is a huge atomic power station that is situated in Russia-controlled territories. Ukraine continues to attack this power station, the oldest in Europe, the largest in Europe. And it doesn't, I graduated nuclear physics, in university, but it doesn't take a nuclear physics graduate to understand the danger and the sheer lack of common sense that comes with attacking such an enterprise. And these attacks were witnessed by international experts, the IAEA experts that were there. So, these attacks continue. It's simple.
Both the sides, and this is exactly what we were talking about. It's it's a very difficult, complex situation where the narratives from both the sides, in fact, take over, and then whether some sort of a common ground can be met, short-term truce leading to long-term solution. But as Dr. Chellaney said, what Donald Trump would have thought in 24 hours at this moment looks like a complete distant dream for the American president. Dr. Chellaney, I request you to stay on with me. Ladies, thank you for joining me on this discussion.